listening to Bare Naked Bravery, a weekly podcast hosted by me, Emily Ann Peterson. This is the place where we expose the threads of heroism that stitch together the stories we admire most. As a musician, singer-songwriter, author, teaching artist, and business owner, I encounter some really fascinating stories. Every episode you'll hear features a revealing conversation with someone who courageously pours themselves out into the world. We'll talk about fears befriended, the terrors battled, and the courage created along our stories of bravery, quiet heroism, and all-out gutsiness. We open the Pandora's box of the dream-crushing constraints we all face during significant moments of bravery. These moments of bare naked bravery are rarely censored in real life. So if you're listening with little ears nearby, please know that some episodes may contain mature language and subject matter. The questions I ask today aren't scripted because I'm just curious. What is bravery? My hope for us all is that by listening to others search for and find their bravery, we will find our own. For that is what we need most, to know that we are not alone. The best way you can support the show is to share it with a friend or two. Send them an email, text, or tweet. Tag them in one of my Instagram posts. My handle's Emily Ann Pete. Or leave us a review on iTunes. It takes seconds and can be done from your phone right now. Bottom line, we need more bravery in the world. So let's be brave together. You're listening to Bare Naked Bravery. This is episode 22, and we are going to do something a little bit different today. Since we are in the throes of the holiday season, I thought I would do something different and use this episode as a teaching tool, not just a storytelling tool. It's something that I think I want to try to do more often in 2017. Oh, we're going to have to get adjusted to that year switch. The thing that I'm talking about is an end of year ritual or an annual review. I have done these things every year for the last probably 10 years. And every year it's been a little bit different. But this year, as you know, I'm a huge fan of Trello, huge fan. I'm also a fan of Chris Gilbo's. He's another author, blogger, entrepreneur, and travel enthusiast from the Northwest. If you haven't heard of him, you should go check him out. I've got a link to his stuff in our show notes. Anyways, he has this year-end ritual of doing what he calls an annual review. And I heard about this, like I said, about 6 to 8 years ago. It's pretty involved, and I highly recommend it, even though it is involved. I've been doing this variation of this for the past 6 years, and it morphs into something different just a little bit every year. I add stuff, I take stuff away, and I usually carve out a couple days of work to make this thing happen. It's, like I said, involved, and it's easier for me to spend one day looking at the past year and then the following days to think about what's coming up. My brain just works better that way. I've known a couple creative entrepreneur friends to actually go rent an Airbnb or get a hotel room to make this happen away from distractions and possibly in an inspiring place. So those are some pretty good ideas. Okay, so let me give you a little backstory on this. Chris uses a spreadsheet for this, but I've adopted a Trello board to my own purposes for this year. And last year I used a huge wall and a bunch of sticky notes. But regardless of what you use, basically you're going to create columns for each area of your life and answer a couple questions about each column. For 2016, I had the following columns: community, family, love, health, art, business income, business expenses, business promotion, a podcast column, a networking column. And in each of these columns, I write out as many answers as I can to the following questions. First question, what went? I try to list out all the things that happened, even if they were kind of neutral experiences. So things like I went on a tour. And even if that is like a really mundane thing, something that normally happens, I put it on there because it is something that actually happened. The second question I ask myself is what went really well? So which of the things were really wonderful, even if they were surprises and unintentional successes? And the third thing I ask is what went terribly? Like what was a total flop and what was so awful that I'm kind of embarrassed to admit? These things are really good to just take note of, not only to avoid later on, but to also lean into in a future time, should those moments or situations arise again. So then I start all over with the same process for the upcoming year. For Trello purposes, I just copy the whole board and title it something different. Like from 2016, I copy the 2016 board and make it into 2017. So sometimes I add new columns. Like for instance, this year I added 2 new columns. And the first one is titled simply Unwind, because as I've mentioned before, I know I get a little too serious sometimes, and I really do want to make an exerted effort to have more fun. Although that's pretty hilarious because the words exerted effort sounds like a lot of work, doesn't it? I'm still unpacking all that. I'll have more for you later, I'm sure. Anyways, the second column is titled Giving Back. As I've been preparing to do this end of year ritual, the word generosity keeps coming up for me. So now it's actually going down on paper, or rather Trello. And if you know me, then you know that if it goes into one of my Trello boards, then I mean business about it. So with all of my upcoming year's columns, I then start dreaming and asking myself the following questions. What will be? I basically unleash my dreamer brain and get started scheming of all the things I want to accomplish in the next year if everything went swimmingly. So the question is really, if you could do whatever you wanted and know that it would be successful, what would you want to do? And that's really important, to unleash that criticism and to unlock the part of your brain that wants to fix things or jump ahead to decide whether it's going to be successful or not. You really need to stay in that dream brain for a good long while, because then the next step is identifying which of the things that I laid out will probably be awesome and totally successful, and which of the things might be a challenge based on what I know already. So for instance, the funding and release of my next album has proven to be more of a challenge than I anticipated in 2016. And even though I'm still dreaming big for 2017, I'm identifying the differences between the challenges and the easy wins that really helps to ground all of these lofty goals and dreamy dreams that I have for the next year. So like I said, you can totally do this all with paper and pen or on a spreadsheet, or you can use Trello too. And I've got a cool video in the show notes that I created outlining how you can use Trello to do the same thing. And not only that, but you also can just have the Trello template that I use for the same project. So if you're someone who loves to go hunting for images to represent your goals, and also if you're someone who loves to add a bunch of detail to your goal planning, this project is definitely for you. You can also add deadlines and notifications at various points in the year too. It's pretty neat. Again, if you're interested in this, go ahead and check out the show notes for this episode. I've got that Trello mini training available for you. And once I have 2017 laid out at a 10,000 foot view, let me tell you, it's pretty exhilarating. Truly. I mean, but this is probably just because I'm a nerd like that. So it might not be such a thrill for you, but to see all of the things that I want to accomplish all at once in one visual swoop is just really pretty cool. I will say this though, after almost like 8 years of doing this intentional year of end of year ritual, having the frame of mind of quote unquote potential, and instead of these goals are actually going to happen mindset, it really helps a lot. But it's unique to your personality type. And I'm just the person who, not surprisingly, bites off more than I can chew, and then I crash and I burn if I don't watch out. And this is part of me watching out for myself. So I think about my goals as potentials because it's a perfect blend of caution and motivation. And the word potential gives enough permission to challenge the course of things mid-year if that's what's needed. So for instance, last time I did this for the year, which was about just over a year ago, I made a lot of huge goals. And eventually I got super disappointed when other things came up throughout the year, even if they were really awesome things. I I spent a good long while sulking about the fact that certain things weren't actually going to happen. But in the meantime, I was launching a podcast and having these fantastic conversations with fellow creative entrepreneurs. And oh my God, I was even starting to write my own book on bravery. And those things were going swimmingly. They were just really going so well. But my perspective, based on the goals that I set previously, were not letting me see and celebrate the fullness of it all. So what I realized mid-sulking a couple of months ago, this is maybe more about half a year ago, was that I hadn't checked in on those goals. I was still using the mindset and the framework from months previously, and I hadn't updated my own perspective to match where I and my business were actually sitting in the present moment. So it's for this reason that I've readopted doing a miniature version of this end of year ritual every couple months or so. I used to do this on a pretty quarterly basis, and you could do this on really super rigid and do it every quarter on the dot, or you could just feel it out for a season like I do, and let your mood determine your need to readjust your goals and your perspective. So whether you try out this end of year ritual or something else, I really encourage you to take some time in the next week or two to ask yourself some specific questions about your previous year and the one that's coming up. If you're not a systems person like myself, then I've created a list of journaling questions to get your head in the game of thinking forward into the new year. I think it's important to use the wisdom that we've gleaned from the previous year to look forward into the upcoming year. And all of those questions are in PDF form in the show notes of the episode as well. In fact, you could just use them and type right into them. Or you can go old school and do pen and paper, which is sometimes what I really love to do. So here are just a couple of those questions. What did I let go of last year? What were the best books I read this year? What am I more prepared for now than ever to face? What wisdom does 2017 hold for me? You can get the full list of questions and like I said, the Trello mini training emailed directly to you. You just go to the show notes at barenakedbravery.com. So I really encourage you to pick which method you want and go for it. However deep or shallow you'd like to dig in, it's really up to you. But I do know that it's really important to do that introspection and kind of 10,000 foot view of your year past and your year going forward. Now, beyond the end of year rituals, I wanted to just share how excited I am about the new year. Looking back on everything, I can see that this next year is going to be really awesome. It floors me to even look at the previous podcast episodes since we launched in August. And we've already got 21 really phenomenal people featured on our show. And I have you guys to thank for that. This is so cool. It has been absolutely thrilling. We started off with 3 episodes with some of my favorite creative entrepreneurs. Naomi Washira had an awesome story about her hometown in Africa and what it's been like living in the US as a singer-songwriter. Ciolo Thompson has talked about what it's like to find your tribe of people and really help them out in whatever your skills and talents are. And Emily Rose talked about breakups with me. We talked about how to make up with people and also how to walk away from relationships in the best way and in the bravest way. For episode 4, Dr. Chris Friesen joined us we talked a lot about resilience in values and what it's like to deal with your negative self-talk that happens and that is totally normal and that we shouldn't actually avoid. We should actually listen to it and basically work with it, not against it. Zach Varnell joined us for episode 5, and he talked all about turning big ideas into small steps. He is an awesome, he's an awesome educator from the Tacoma, Washington area, and he started a brand new school that works in a completely different way. And if you have any interest in education at all, and any interest in turning your big ideas into small, manageable steps, i.e. your New Year's resolutions, then you should listen to Zach Varnell's episode in episode 5. Then Carrie Ockery joined us, and she talked all about what it's like to work with a band and work with a group of creatives and then venture out on your own as a solo person. It's not easy being queen. That's the title of her episode. And I have to agree with her. It is not easy because I am a solopreneur. I do my own stuff. And sometimes it gets a little lonely, but for the most part, it's really powerful to be able to make the decisions that we need to make at the times we need to make them. If you're at all interested in that, Carrie Ockrey is totally spunky and a badass creative, then you got to listen to her episode. Then for episode 7, Maggie McGeehee, who's one of my former cello students, she talked a lot about what it was like to get diagnosed and to recover from having hepatitis C. And she really dealt with that in a really creative way. It's a really cool story. If you have somebody who is dealing with a health issue, that is the episode for you to listen to, because Maggie dealt with really trying situation in a really beautiful, creative way. And I think it's really inspiring. Then Allison Sigmund joined us in episode 9 to talk about delivering bad news in good ways. And she wrote the book. She literally wrote the book, Delivering Bad News in Good Ways. She has a really vulnerable story to tell about her mom and the end days of her mom's life. I think she is an all-around badass, and I think you should listen to that episode. She's really, really great lady. In episode 8, this is before Allison's episode, but in episode 8, Brittany Barbara joined us to talk about practical ways to respond with empathy. If you haven't listened to that yet, then let me just tell you that Brittany is such a sweetheart. She's an East Coast singer-songwriter and wrote a book all about letting people be weak and what it's like when you're dealing with grief and you don't feel very strong and capable. She has some really wonderful things to say about empathy and caring for people around you. In episode 10, Wendy Van de Poel is also an author. She talked about facing your abusers and what it was like to have an emotionally abusive relationship with one of her creative partners and what it was like to walk away from that and also to face it again, because she's still in that creative element on a day-to-day basis. And she's truly brave. She's got wonderful things to share about that story. Then my friend Kai Alfred Hillig is hilarious. You've got to hear him. He joins us for 2 episodes. That episode, we split it up into 2 because he and I just kept talking, and it was really good stuff. So I didn't want to save any of it or hide any of it. I wanted to share it all with you. So he and I talk about building creative bunkers, ripping out the pacifier of your creativity, and shaking snow globes and just kind of shaking things up in general. We also talk about truth, trauma, and he tells the story about the moment when he open-handed slapped his friend in the face. It's shocking and funny and wonderful, and you will love him. Then in episode 13, Maximilo Campos joined us and started talking about blindness. He is blind. He lost his sight when he was little, and he started over in a new country just at around the same time that he lost his sight, which was really earth-shatteringly just amazing. His story is really wonderful, and he has such a vulnerable approach and an intuitive skill now due to his story. It's something worth hearing. Then Adina Coomber joined us to talk about foolish desires and tall poppy syndrome and what it's like to fall in love. She's from Australia. She's wonderful. Super fun gal. And then Nick Conadera is a filmmaker, and he joined us to talk about miracle mornings and habits and daily habits and what it's like to be a bootstrap creative entrepreneur and cut through resistance on a day-to-day basis. He is really wonderful. Oh my gosh, walking through all of these one by one is really amazing. Up next, we had Bethany Ray, who's a visual artist, and she and I get to just kind of talk and shoot the shit about selfies, self-image, and finding belonging. And then Barry Tessler joined us for episode 18. We talked all about money and owning your worth and when to walk away and when to build a generous business and how to do that. Barry Tessler is the financial therapist who wrote the book called The Art of Money, which is wonderful, and you got to check it out on Amazon. Her conversation is just so heartfelt and tender, and she really did such a courageous job of sharing her story with us, and I really admired it. Jake Hemming, my friend and singer-songwriter and fellow creative entrepreneur and education enthusiast, he and I talk in episode 18 all about death and fighting for love and loving with your whole heart and how to deal with the end of life. That was a really powerful week for me. I really appreciated having that conversation with him just in general. He's a wonderful, wonderful human, and I would have a conversation with him any day. But about this specific topic, it was a really, really, really insightful. Then in episode 19, Carly Nimmo joined us and talked about declaring bankruptcy and walking away and whether to choose to do that or not. We talked about defining our value, and we also talked about the power of connection. And Carly is actually a podcaster herself, and she interviewed me. And so her interview of me is available on her podcast called Carlosophies, which is a super great podcast. You should check that out. Okay, and then the most recent two episodes are episode 20 with David Schreiner-Kahn. He's a business consultant. He and I talk about smashing plateaus. He is the host of the podcast Smashing Plateaus. And we also talk about reframing hustle and redefining it and where we can find our wherewithal. It's a super cool conversation. Then Teresa Reed recently just joined us, and she and I talked about listening to haters and using our righteous indignation even though we are heeding warning signs and how to heed warning signs. And she and I actually also talk a lot about parenting in that episode too, which is also a brave thing. We started this podcast in August, and in just 21 episodes in 21 weeks, we have covered so much ground and so many wonderful conversations and juicy subjects around the topics of bravery and creative entrepreneurship and what it means to live an artful life. And I am so honored that I get to give this bundle of conversations to you this year. And I'm really excited for 2017 and everything else that is coming in the next year. I want to wish you and your families and your loved ones and your friends a happy holiday season, a Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year, and all of that all bundled up in a great big fuzzy teddy bear bundle. I think that bravery is a really important topic in our daily life. It's not something that gets talked about a lot, but it's something that we require every day to get out of bed and do. And I think it's really important that you, as a listener, are brave in your own life, whether that comes through in your own business or as being a parent or as being an artist or a singer-songwriter yourself. Bravery is going to be the thing that gets you going in your life. It's also going to be the thing that makes your life, it kind of makes or break your life. It makes your life really rich and valuable, and that is the only thing I want for you this year and in this season, is to have more bravery and to be able to have the intuitive care for yourself to dream big and have a crazy awesome imagination, yet have a sense of risk and realness and honesty with the people around you. I want to also give a shout out and a big, huge thank you to Music Box Licensing. My friend Will Bangs is the owner and operator of that, and I want to give him a big, huge shout out because the music that he has supported us with through this season has been so perfect, and his contribution to the world and his bravery in the world does not go unnoticed, especially by our audiences, and really grateful for that. I also wanted to thank all 10 international visual artists who contributed their pieces to our Bare Naked Bravery coloring book, which you can download at barenakedbravery.com/color, COLOR, the American spelling of color. And that coloring book is super, super, super cool, and I'm looking forward to releasing it as a paperback on Amazon in 2017. That is just a little peek at what we have in store for you. So with that, I want to wish you a happy 2016 and a happy 2017, and I will see you in the new year with all that we will have in store for you. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe, because when the new episodes come, then you will have them automatically. It's really important. Hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the new year.